Hi, my name is Joseph Lumpkin, and I am one of the writers and the CEO at Fifth Estate Publishing. Today I come to you to talk about Islam. Uh, the topic is near and dear to me because I see the encroaching destruction of our society through this organization. Now, this talk will be quick and it'll be off the cuff, and you'll have to forgive me if I skip some major details, but I will tell you where to get them and how to interpret them. First of all, the problem that we have with Islam is that we do not understand the organizational structure, period. We have it classified as a religion, and it is not only a religion. Matter of fact, one could argue the fact that it's not a religion at all, but that would, I think, be going to an extreme. Islam is a set of socio-political rules based on a book written in the 7th century by the prophet or the person Muhammad, according to if you think he is divinely inspired or not. Now, part of the problem is that these tenets, these commandments, if you will, suggest that the followers establish a caliphate. It is a state run by a religious leader who is divinely appointed. This caliphate will then expand and become worldwide. And herein lies the problem. If we say that Islam is a religion, then it is protected by the U.S. by our laws. But we can't say it is a religion because anything, any organization that touts a political structure with its own set of laws that it wishes to supersede the laws of the land, and its own structure as a nation, and its own push to increase its territory, imperialism, if you will, to take over the world in time and make the world a caliphate, and to destabilize governments along the way, and to eradicate all other religions except for Islam. That is not a religion. That is a national movement. And therein lies the problem. We have got to get our head out of the sand. We've got to look at the Quran and what it really says, and know that Islam is not a religion. It is a national or a nationalist movement. It is a political movement to establish and to expand a worldwide government, one overthrown nation at a time. And they do this by coming in, and in time they will first they will plead that they are the minority and must be taken care of. Then they will suck the life out of our social systems, because if you have more than one wife, and in the U.S. you can only claim one wife, then what you do is you claim that one wife as yours, and then the rest of them, they will be on welfare. And so you have this kind of thing going on. You also have this internal struggle of can we do Sharia law in our community? Can we offer Sharia law in our county? Can we impose Sharia law nationally? All these things are going on right now. If you watch the papers, there's always something in the court system that is trying to define the use of Sharia law in one situation or the other. Now, we can say that this is just radical Islam, but it's really not true. And that's the other problem. It's that it is in the Quran, and so any good Islamist, any good Muslim will want to adhere to these rules, these laws, and they will want Sharia law, which means that they will want the laws, their laws, as opposed to the laws of the land. So the other thing about the Quran is that it is not written in chronological order. It is basically written from the largest verse to the smallest verse, almost like an upside down triangle when you graft it. And you have to know what laws, what verses were written at what time, because there's something called the rule of abrogation. And the rule of abrogation says that if I say something about a particular subject, and then later on I say something else that contradicts that, if I am Muhammad, then the last thing that I said abrogates or cancels out the first thing that I said. Okay? So when Muhammad started preaching in Mecca, it was a push of a religion of peace. But he didn't get what he wanted. He didn't get the response that he wanted. So he left Mecca, went to Medina, and there he formed an army and started taking over all the areas and forcing conversion by the sword. Then he went back to Mecca and took it. And as a matter of fact, the cube that is that you do the Hajj to, and you walk around, that actually was the cube, the structure that housed many polytheist deities, because Mecca was a polytheistic society. But I digress. At the end of his life, after marrying a 6-year-old and waiting until she was 9 before he consummated, and marrying a 13-year-old, and you see him kind of spiraling out of control, becoming more and more of a warlord and more of a sexual deviant. At the end of his life, he was a very bitter, very hateful warlord, and he uttered something called the verse of the sword. And the verse of the sword basically says, forget everything that I told you about peace before. You are to go out and you are to conquer any non-believer, any polytheist, any idolater. You are to kill them or convert them. And there is something in the verse of the sword that says you can also levy very high taxes and allow them to worship and leave them alone, but tax the hell out of them until basically they submit, crumble, or convert. So, knowing this, and knowing where our country is going, and knowing that they're using our laws against us, we have to redefine Islam. First of all, we have to say that there is no such thing as a radical Islamist, there's just an Islamist. Terrorism is called for in the Quran. That is a very difficult thing to swallow, to say that a religion calls for that. But there are basically 2 types of religions in the world. One is pre and one is post-axial age. And what I mean by this, it's a little complicated. We went through, as a society, as a human world, religious, worshipping people, we went through a change, an evolution, almost overnight. Pre-axial age, we had a God who was punitive, destructive, hateful, and did not allow anything but what we saw as right. We sacrificed to that God. We had more than one God usually, and we were always trying to figure out what he or she wanted, and we were always trying to do what he or she wanted, and we were sacrificing animals and fellow human beings and all of those things in the pre-axial age. Then one day humankind woke up, and almost overnight Buddha appeared, Lao Tzu, Confucius, all of these great leaders that said, wait a minute, the law really is compassion. Jesus Christ was the end of the axial age, and some people think the absolute fruit of the axial age. He combined the best of all, and we saw in him the ultimate kindness and the ultimate love that came out of the evolution of the axial age. So religion from that point on has been defined as a religion that is either pre or post-axial age. You either hate and conquer, or you love and you encompass and you have compassion. Islam is a throwback to pre-axial age. The rules of compassion don't work with them. They are told within the Quran, you can lie, cheat, steal, whatever you have to do to overcome the infidels. You can kill them. There are several verses in the Quran that basically says you cut off their heads, you cut off their fingers, you cut off a hand from the left side and a foot from the right, or vice versa, and you torment them, and you basically conquer them, and you take them in, because nothing exists in the world at the end of this age except for Islam. That is what they want and what they're trying to accomplish. They are a nationalist movement, not a religion. Now, if you want to know what the Quran says, we have put out 3 classical translations of the Quran in one book, along with the instructions on how to interpret the Quran. This is a huge, huge book, and this is the Quran for infidels. If you want a book that basically will take one reading of the Quran along with a general interpretation and what we should be doing to protect ourselves when radical Islam establishes itself here, which it already has, this is Radical Islam, Understand, Prepare, and Defend. And it's put out by Fifth Estate Publishing. And you can get them on Amazon. So here's the deal. Basic, baseline, bottom line thing. Read the Quran. Understand for yourself. Understand how to interpret it before you read it. That way, when you ingest the Quran, you can actually say this abrogates that, and so therefore this verse doesn't apply anymore. It's just this one. You will find out that the verse of the sword abrogated about half the Quran. In this book, Radical Islam, you will also find the history that led us up to this point. You will see what became of Al-Qaeda, how it became ISIS, how it still exists, but it morphed, and how every single evolution of Islamic belief becomes more and more radical and more focused on overthrowing other nations and making them Muslim nations. We must find a way out of this morass. This is not a political video, but I will tell you that Donald Trump's idea is the best on this particular slice of the pie. We must stop immigrants coming in from nations that we know engender violence and terrorism. Stop them altogether. We cannot afford it. Not even one. The CIA tells us that 20% of Muslims are radicalized. That is 300 million Muslims radicalized right now, wanting to overthrow countries, especially ours, especially the Eastern or Western countries, rather. And one more thing. You say to yourself, we are not polytheists, we are not idolaters. Why do they want to kill us? Because most Christians believe in the Trinity. And the Trinity has been declared by most Muslim leaders to be a polytheistic belief system. We at one time coexisted, but we cannot any longer coexist. They are in force, in mass, out to make the United States a Muslim country under Sharia law. We see it happening in the UK. We see it happening in the EU. They come in and they take over because their purpose is not to coexist. Their purpose is to establish a worldwide caliphate, one country at a time, finally combining into a world system. And at that particular point, they believe that their Messiah will appear. Please, buy the books, educate yourself, and hang on, because the worst is yet to come.